was never supposed to be her husband, not even for a second. But one shocking sentence from the most powerful woman in the building changed everything, and by the end of that night, he would realize he had stepped into a world he could never escape. Ryan Carter had mastered the art of staying invisible. That was how you survived in a place like Hayes Global. You did your work, kept your head down, and never got noticed by people like her. Olivia Hayes, CEO, the woman everyone feared, respected, and whispered about behind closed doors. She was known for closing billion-dollar deals without blinking, for firing executives twice her age, without hesitation, for never letting emotions interfere with business, and for one very specific thing, she never mixed her personal life with work, which is why what happened that night made absolutely no sense. It was almost 9 in the evening when Ryan finally shut down his computer. The office floor was nearly empty, just a few lights still glowing across the glass. Walsey grabbed his jacket, ready to leave, when his phone buzzed in. Known number. He almost ignored it, but something told him not to. He answered. Ryan Carter, a calm female voice, said. His body stiffened, instantly succumbed. To my office. Now the line went dead. Explanation. No hesitation. Ryan stared at his phone for a few seconds, trying to process what just happened. He knew that voice. Everyone did. Olivia Hayes' heart started beating faster as he walked down the long hallway toward the executive floor. Each step felt heavier than the last. Employees did not get called into her office after hours, unless something was wrong, very wrong. He reached the door, took a breath. Knocked once. In her voice was sharper this time. Ryan stepped inside and immediately felt the shift in atmosphere. Her office was exactly what you would expect. Minimos, expensive, perfectly controlled, floor-to-ceiling windows behind her, showing the glowing city skyline. Massive desk, clean, except for a single file, and Olivia standing near the window, not sitting, not working, waiting. That alone was enough to make his chest tighten. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto his. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then she walked toward him, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Ryan Carter, she said quietly, you have been working here for 3 years. You have no complaints on record, no disciplinary issues, and you are known for being reliable. He swallowed. Yes. She stopped just a few feet away from him, close enough that he could feel the pressure of her presence. I need you tonight. Ryan blinked. I am sorry. Her gaze sharpened. I need you to act as my husband for one dinner. The words hit him like a punch. For a second, he thought he misheard. You're what, my husband? She repeated calmly. Ryan let out a nervous laugh. Is this some kind of test? She did not smile. No. The room went silent. Sharon searched her face for any sign of humor, but there was none. Only seriousness, only urgency. Do not understand, he said. You do not need to understand, she replied. You just need to say yes. Ryan felt his mind spinning. This was insane. Why me? Because you are exactly what I need, she said, without hesitation. Are unnoticed. You are adaptable. Most importantly, you are not involved in corporate politics. Cheyenne shook his head slightly. This is not something I can just do. She stepped even closer. What if I told you this one night could change your entire life? He froze. She walked back to her desk, opened the file, and slid a document toward him. He looked down. The number written on it made his breath catch. It was more money than he made in a year for one night. This is just for showing up, she said. There will be more if everything goes well. Ryan looked back up at her. Why is this so important? For the first time her expression shifted just slightly. Not weakness, but something deeper. Because tonight I am being evaluated by people who believe a woman without a stable personal life cannot lead a stable company. Ryan frowned. That is ridiculous. She gave a faint, almost bitter smile. Welcome to my world. Ryan hesitated. And you think pretending to be married will fix that? Tit will remove their doubts, she said. Doubts are dangerous in my position. He ran a hand through his hair. This is crazy. Yes, it is, she said, calmly, but it is necessary. The room felt heavier. With every passing second, Ryan knew he should say no. He knew this crossed every professional boundary, but that number on the paper end. The way she was looking at him like she had already decided it made. Walking away harder than it should have been. What I have to do? He asked. Slowly she straightened. You will arrive at my penthouse in 1 hour. You will dress appropriately. Will accompany me to dinner. You will speak when necessary, and you will act like a husband who has been by my side for years. Ryan let out a breath, and after that, you go back to your normal life. Simple, but something in her tone made it feel anything but simple. Ryan looked at the paper one more time, then back at her, and in that moment, he made a decision he would regret, or maybe never escape. I will do it, he said. Quietly, for the first time that night, Olivia smiled good. But it was not a warm smile. Was the kind of smile that meant something had already begun, something neither of them could. Stops. Ryan turned to leave. She spoke again. One more thing. He paused. Do not forget tonight. You are not pretending for them. You are convincing them. Ryan nodded, slowly, and walked out, but as the elevator doors closed, and his reflection stared back at him, one thought refused to leave his mind. What if he was not just convincing them? What if by the end of the night he would have to convince himself to? And what happens when a lie starts to feel real? Because one dinner was never going to be just one dinner, and Ryan was about to find out exactly how dangerous this deal really was, and why Olivia Hayes chose him out of everyone, because the truth was something he had not even begun to understand yet. He thought the hardest part was saying yes, but Ryan had no idea the real challenge was about to begin. The moment he stood in front of her door, because one look at Olivia Hayes that night would make him forget this was ever supposed to be adjusted his tie for the third time as he stood outside the private penthouse door, high above the glowing city. His reflection in the polished metal looked unfamiliar, sharper, more confident. Almost like someone else entirely. Not an assistant, not invisible. He was her husband. At least that was what he kept telling himself. He raised his hand and knocked. For a second nothing happened. Then the door slowly opened, and everything in his mind went completely blank. Olivia Hayes stood in front of him, but she did not look like the woman from the office. She looked different, softer, yet more dangerous. She was wearing a deep, elegant evening dress, perfectly fitted, her hair falling effortlessly over her shoulders. Her presence commanding without even trying. Forgot how to speak for a brief moment. She just watched him taking him in. Then her lips curved slightly. You clean up well, she said. Ryan let out a breath. He did not realize he was holding you. Look different. That was the worst possible word he could have chosen, but Olivia did not seem offended. She stepped aside. Come in, husband. The word hit differently this time. Ryan walked in slowly, taking in the luxurious space, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern design, everything perfectly arranged, like her office, but more personal, more intimate. That made it more dangerous. Close the door, she said softly. He did. The sound echoed louder than it should have. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she walked toward him, heels clicking softly again. That same controlled confidence, but this time there was something else, something warmer. Stand still, she said. Ryan froze as she stepped closer, reaching up to adjust his tie. Her fingers brushed against his collar, lightly, but that small touch sent a shock through him. There was nothing professional about this moment. Look at me, she said quietly. He did, and instantly regretted it, because now he was too close enough to notice every detail, her eyes, her expression, the way she was studying him, like she was trying to read something deeper. This is important, Ryan, she said. You cannot hesitate. Tonight, you cannot look unsure. You doubt even once, they will see Eth. Swallowed. I understand, do you? She whispered. Because if you fail, you do not just embarrass yourself, you take me down with youth. Weight of her words hit hard. Ryan nodded. I will not fail for a second. She held his gaze. Then slowly she smiled again. Good. But this time it felt real. She stepped back just enough to create distance, but not enough to make things comfortable. Again, we should go. The ride down to the car was quiet, but not empty. The tension between them filled every inch of space. Ryan could feel it in the way she stood beside him, close enough that their arms brushed slightly every time the elevator shifted. Neither of them moved away. When they reached the car, the driver opened the door, and Olivia stepped in. First Ryan followed, sitting beside Hertha. City lights outside blurred as the car began to move inside. It was quiet, too quiet. Then Olivia spoke. "Tell me something about yourself." Brian blinked. "What if we are married?" she said calmly. "I should know more than your name, right?" He hesitated. "I grew up in a small town, nothing special, came here for work, tried to build something." She watched him carefully. "Family not close," he said simply. She nodded slowly, as if filing that information away, and relationships. Let out a small breath, none that lasted, that almost sounded like a confession. She leaned back slightly, her eyes still on him. "Good." He frowned. "Good, yes," she said. "It means you will not confuse tonight with something else." Ryan looked away toward the window that might already be too late, he thought, but he did not say ta. Few minutes later, the car stopped. Ryan stepped out first, then turned, offering his hand for a split second. Olivia hesitated. Then she placed her hand in his hand. Just like that, something shifted again. Her grip was firm, confident, but there was a hint of something softer underneath. They walked toward the restaurant together, cameras flashing from a distance. The kind of attention Ryan had never experienced before. Aside everything was elegance, power, control, exactly her world, and now he was standing in it beside her. "Remember," she whispered. As they walked to belong here, Ryan nodded, but inside he was not so sure. They approached the table, where several well-dressed individuals were already seated. Conversations paused as Olivia arrived. All eyes shifted to Ryan. "This must be your husband," one of them said, with a polite smile that did not quite reach his. Olivia did not hesitate. She said, confidently, "This is Ryan, her husband." The word landed differently. Now he felt it, not just heard. Itrian extended his hand, shaking each person firmly, meeting their gaze. Just like she would. Confident. "Kamoon," began the conversation, moved quickly. Business deals, subtle tests, hidden judgments. Ryan stayed quiet, at first observing, learning, adapting. But every time Olivia spoke, he noticed something. She was strong, sharp, unbreakable. There were moments, small, almost invisible moments, where she checked if he was still there, and every time he was. At one point, a man across the table leaned forward, his tone slightly challenging. "It is rare to see you bring someone into this environment." Olivia. Ryan felt the shift immediately. This was it, the test. Olivia smiled faintly. "He is not just someone." Before she could continue, Ryan spoke. "He is her partner." The table went quiet even. Olivia looked at him for a second. Ryan continued, his voice steady. "And partners stand together, not behind, not in the shadows, but beside." Silence filled the room. Then slowly, the tension eased. The conversation shifted, and just like that, Trion had crossed a line. He was no longer just playing along. He was leading, and Olivia noticed the rest of the dinner flowed differently. More respect, more attention, more belief. It finally ended, and they stood to live. Olivia did not let go of his arm, not even once. Outside, the night air felt colder, but Ryan barely noticed because his mind was still inside that moment, still replaying every. "Did well," she said. As they reached the car, Anne looked at her. "So, did you?" She shook her head. "Slightly. No, tonight too saved me. That was not part of the deal. That was something else. Something deeper." As they sat in the car again, driving back to the penthouse, the silence returned. But now it was different, heavier. Real. Ryan turned slightly toward her. "What happens now?" Olivia did not answer immediately. She looked out the window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Then finally, she spoke. "That depends on whether you can keep pretending." Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. "If I cannot," she turned to face him fully. "Now then, this becomes a problem, not just for me, but For you her voice was calm, but the meaning was clear. This was not over, not even close. And Ryan realized something. In that moment he was already in too deep, and walking Oa might not be an option anymore. If you are enjoying the story so far, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because what happens next will change everything. The next step in this fake marriage was about to become even more real and far more dangerous than either of them expected. No one at that table expected the quiet assistant to take control of the night. But what Ryan did next did not just impress them, it changed the entire power dynamic. And by the end of that dinner, Olivia Hayes would look at him in a way she never had before. The moment Ryan spoke those words, the entire atmosphere shifted. You could feel it, the subtle tension, the silent calculations, the way every powerful person at that table suddenly started seeing him differently. Not as an accessory, but as a CSR, but as a factor. Olivia remained composed beside him. But inside, something had changed. She had brought him here to support her, not to take control, and yet somehow he had done both. The man across the table, who had challenged her earlier, leaned back slightly, studying Ryan with a sharper gaze. Interesting, he said slowly. You speak with confidence, for someone who has never been seen before. Did not flinch. Confidence does not come from being seen, he replied calmly. It comes from knowing where you stand. A brief silence followed. Then another voice joined in. And where exactly do you stand? Ryan felt Olivia's hand lightly tighten around his arm, a warning, or maybe something else, but he did not step back. I stand with my wife. Word landed stronger this time. Not just a role, not just an act. It sounded real, too real. For a split second, Olivia's composure almost broke, but she recovered quickly. The conversation moved forward, but now it was different, more focused, more intense. More personal questions started coming at Ryan, directly, not aggressive, but deliberate. They wanted to understand him, test him, measure him, and every answer he gave was careful, balanced, and confident. He did not try to overpower the room. He matched a hand. That was what made it dangerous. At one point an older investor leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Tell me, Ryan, what do you think is Olivia's greatest weakness? Question was sharp, calculated. Trap. Ryan felt it instantly. He could feel Olivia go still beside him, waiting, watching. Everyone at the table leaned in slightly. This was not just about business anymore. This was about control, trust, power. Ryan took a slow breath, then answered, she does not have one. Few people smirked to safe. Someone muttered. Ryan continued, not because she is perfect, but because she does not allow weakness to exist long enough to define her. Now the smirks faded. That is not weakness. That is discipline. Silence again. Then slowly, the older investor noted. Well said. Ryan felt Olivia's grip loosen slightly, but she did not let go. Diener continued. But now there was a clear shift. Respect, real respect, not just for Olivia, but for him, and that was something no one had expected, not even Olivia herself. The final course arrived. The same man who had questioned her earlier spoke again, his tone more measured. This time you have kept this part of your life very hidden, Olivia. She met his gaze without hesitation. Privacy is not weakness. No, he said, but secrecy can be. Tension returned sharper, this time more dangerous. Ryan could feel it building again. This time he knew exactly what to do. Some things are worth protecting, he said calmly. The man turned his attention to him. And this is one of those things. Ryan nodded. Not everything valuable needs to be displayed. Some things become stronger when they are kept away from unnecessary attention. The table went quiet once more, but this time it was different. There was no challenge left, only acceptance. And just like that, the final barrier broke. The dinner ended. Not with tension, but with agreement. Deals were not signed yet, but they were closer than ever, and everyone in that room knew it. As they stood up to leave, several people approached Olivia, shaking her hand, speaking with a level of respect that had not been there before. But something else happened too. They acknowledged Ryan not as an assistant, not as an outsider, but as her equal, and that changed everything. When they finally stepped outside into the cool night air, Olivia did something unexpected. She did not move away. Instead, she stayed closer than before, hands still resting lightly on his arm. "You were not supposed to do that," she said, quietly. Ryan looked at her. "Do what? Take control?" He let out a small breath. Someone had too. She studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face, trying to understand something, or maybe confirm it. "And what if I did not want you to?" There was something in her tone, not anger, not frustration, something else, something deeper. Ryan stepped slightly closer, lowering his voice. "Then you should not have chosen me." For a second time seemed to pause. The space between them felt different now, charged in. Suddenly flashes of cameras broke the moment. Reporters from a distance, trying to capture a glimpse of the powerful CEO and her mysterious husband. Olivia's expression shifted instantly, back to controlled perfection. "We need to go," she said. But this time her hand did not leave his arm, not once. The car ride back was quieter than before, but heavier, filled with unspoken thoughts and answered questions. Ryan looked out the window, trying to steady his thoughts, but one thing kept repeating in his mind. This was no longer just a Roland. He was no longer just playing along. When they reached the penthouse, neither of them moved immediately. The engine turned off. Silence filled the space. Then Olivia spoke. "Come upstairs." It was not a request. Ryan followed her again, but this time everything felt different. Moment they stepped inside, she turned to face him. No distance, no hesitation. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Ryan frowned slightly. "Do what you went beyond what I asked. You changed the dynamic. You took risks. That was not part of the agreement." He held her gaze. "Maybe I did not want to just follow instructions. Maybe I wanted to make sure you won." The words hung in the air. "He be honest." "Too honest for a moment." Olivia said nothing. Then slowly she stepped closer. "So this was not about the money." Ryan shook his head slightly. "Not anymore." That was the moment everything shifted completely, because now there was no pretending left. Truth was far more dangerous. Olivia looked at him differently. Now not as an employee, not even as a partner in a deal, but as something she had not allowed herself to have. Someone who stood beside her, not because he had to, but because he chose to, and that terrified her. "You are making this complicated," she said softly. Ryan let out a quiet breath. It already as silence fell between them again, but this time it was not uncomfortable. It was real. Real meant risky, very risky, because the more real this became, the harder it would be to walk a wand deep down. Neither of them were sure they wanted to. If you thought tonight was intense, then you are not ready for what happens next. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, because the next chapter will take this fake marriage to a level no one will see coming, because what started as one dinner was about to turn into something much bigger. Something neither of them could control them. When that happens, there is no going back. The moment Olivia stepped closer, everything Ryan thought he understood about this arrangement started falling apart, because this was no longer about a fake marriage or a business strategy. This was something far more dangerous, something neither of them were prepared to control. The silence between them inside the penthouse felt heavier than anything they had faced at the dinner. No investors, no pressure, no audience, just the two of them. And the truth they were both trying not to admit stood inches away from him, her eyes locked onto his, like she was searching for something she could not quite define. Ryan did not move. He could feel it, the shift, the line they were about to cross. "You should leave," she said softly, but her voice did not match her words. Ryan noticed. "You do not mean that." Brief pause. Then she looked away, just for a second. That was all the confirmation he needed. "This is getting complicated," she added. Ryan let out a quiet breath. It was always going to be. She turned back to him slowly. "No," she said, "it was supposed to be simple. One dinner, one act, one Clean Exitrian gave a faint, almost ironic smile. Then you chose the wrong person. That made her pause. Really, yes, because I do not walk away. Is Salitha words settled deep too deep? Olivia stepped back slightly, creating space, but not enough to remove the tension. That is exactly what makes this dangerous. Ryan tilted his head slightly. Dangerous for who? For both of us, she replied. Without hesitation, she walked toward the window, the city lights reflecting across the glass, casting soft shadows across her face. Ryan followed slowly, stopping just a few feet behind her. You are used to controlling everything, he said quietly. She did not deny Etiasand. This, he gestured lightly between them, this is not something you can control. That hit harder than anything else. Because she knew it was true. For the first time that night, Olivia did something unexpected. She let her guard drop just a little. I cannot afford mistakes. Ryan, her voice was softer now, more human, more real. You think this is a mistake? He asked. She hesitated. Think this is something that could turn into one? Ryan stepped closer. Or something that could change everything. She turned quickly, now facing him again. That is exactly what I am. Trying to avoid the tension spiked against stronger than before, because now it was not just action, it was fear of what this could become, how much it could cost. Sheehan held her gaze steady. Then why did you not let go tonight? The question caught her off guard. At the restaurant, after the dinner, even outside, you could have stepped away. You did nothing. Lips parted slightly, but no words came out immediately, because deep down she knew the answer, but saying it out loud would make it really needed to. Sell the story, she said. Finally, Ryan shook his head, slowly. Node, that was not it. And you know it. Another silence, longer, this time more intense. Then Olivia did something neither of them expected. Closed the distance again, not aggressively, not impulsively, but deliberately, like she had made a decision. Are not as easy to control as I thought, she said quietly. Ryan smirked faintly. You hired me for the wrong reason. She studied him carefully, or maybe she paused. I hired you for exactly the right one. That changed everything. Again, because now there was no denial left, only tension, only truth, only risk. Her hand slowly lifted, resting lightly against his chest. Ryan felt his heartbeat spike instantly. This was not part of the plan. None of this was. You should stop me, she whispered. Ryan did not move. Why would I? That was the moment, the exact moment where everything crossed the line, because neither of them stepped back, neither of them stopped, and neither of them wanted to. But just before anything could happen, Olivia pulled her hand away, quickly turning her back to him. No, her voice was sharper. Now this cannot happen. Ryan frowned slightly. Why? Because I said so. That was the CEO again, the control the wall, but this time it felt weaker. Ryan stepped closer again. That is not a reason. Turned back, frustration flashing across her face. Because I do not mix emotions with business. There, it was the rule, the one thing she never broke. Ryan nodded slowly. And tonight was just business. She did not answer, because they both knew that was no longer truth. Air between them felt heavier, almost suffocating. Then Olivia walked past him toward the table, picking up her glass and taking a small sip, trying to regain control. Did your job, she said, without looking at him. Ryan stood still for a moment. Then slowly he moved toward the door, but just as his hand touched Ith, stopped because something did not feel right. This was not over, not even close. You are going to ask me again, he said. Quietly. Olivia froze to stand. Another silence, then she turned slowly. This time there was no mask left. Yes, the single word changed everything. Because it was not a command. It was not business. It was real. Ryan let go of the door, walking back toward her. And now there was no space left between them, no pretending, no roles, just two people standing too close, with too much at stake. This changes things, he said. I know this makes everything more complicated. No, this could ruin everything. No, but she did not step back, and neither did he, because sometimes knowing the risk does not stop the fall, only makes it harder to resist. If you have made it this far into the story, then make sure you like, comment, and tell me you are watching from which country, and do not forget to subscribe, because the next chapter is where everything will explode, because what happens when emotions take over control, when pretending turns into something real, and when walking away is no longer an option. The next chapter will answer the Tan. Trust me, you are not ready for what is coming next. By the time the sun rose over the city, everything had already changed, because what happened between Ryan and Olivia that night was not just a mistake. It was the beginning of something neither of them could hide anymore. And the world was about to find out in the worst possible way. Ryan barely slept, not because he could not, but because his mind refused to slow down every moment. From the night, replayed again and again, the dinner, the tension, the way Olivia looked at him, manned, the moment everything almost crossed a line, or maybe already had. He stood near the window in the penthouse, watching the early morning light spread across the skyline. Was not his world, it was never supposed to be, and yet he was still here behind him. He heard movement, walked into the living space, dressed differently now, more casual but still composed, still controlled, but her eyes, they were not the same. There was something there, something unsettled. You stayed, she said quietly. Ryan turned slightly. You asked me. Toa. Small pause. Then she nodded. Right. The air between them felt different this morning. Intense, but more complicated, like something had shifted permanently. Before either of them could say anything else, her phone rang. She picked it up without checking. The caller ease, her expression changed instantly. Shirt focused, alert. What do you mean? Ryan watched as the calm returned to her posture, but her eyes told a different story. Send it to Minoshi ended the call slowly. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at her phone. Then she looked up at Ryan, and for the first time, there was real concern. We have a problem. Ryan felt his chest tighten. What happened? She walked toward him, turning the screen so he could see, and the moment he looked, everything dropped. Photos from last night, clear, close, impossible to deny. Him and Olivia walking together, him holding her looking at him like it was real, because it was. Is everywhere, she said. Media, investors, social platforms, they are calling you my husband. Ryan let out a slow breath. That not what we told them. She shook her head slightly. We told a room full of people that the entire world, that was the difference, and now that difference was gone. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. So what do we do? Olivia did not hesitate this time. We continue. He looked at her. Continuous. We do not deny it. We do not explain it. We control it. That was her instinct. Turn chaos into strategy. Risk into power. Ryan studied her face. And what about us? That question landed harder than anything else. For a second she had no answer. Then she stepped closer, her voice lower. Now that does not change anything. Ryan frowned slightly. It changes everything. She looked away briefly, then back at him. Only if you let it. The tension returned instantly, stronger than before, because now this was no longer private. The entire world was watching. There was a knock at the door, sharper, and Olivia did not move. Come in. The door opened, and one of her senior managers stepped inside, looking slightly overwhelmed. Need to see this? Olivia raised an eyebrow. Already have it. Is bigger than that. He stepped aside, revealing a tablet screen with live coverage, news anchors discussing her relationships, speculating about her sudden marriage, analyzing what it meant for the company. Ryan felt the weight of it immediately. This was not just gossip. This was impact, investor confidence, public perception, corporate power. Everything was shifting. They want a statement, the manager continued. Olivia's expression hardened again. Of course they do. She turned to Ryan. This is where it becomes real. He gave a faint, almost ironic smile. Already is. For a moment, their eyes locked again, and Something unspoken passed between them, no more pretending not. Even for themselves, Olivia straightened slightly, stepping fully back into parole. "Get the team ready," she said. "We will make a public appearance." The manager nodded quickly and left the door closed. Silence returned, but now it was different, heavier. Louder, more final. Ryan looked at her. "So, this is it," she nodded. "This is it, a fake marriage that the world believes a truth they cannot explain and feelings they cannot control." He stepped closer one last time. "What happens when this ends?" That question stayed in the air unanswered, because neither of them knew, or maybe they did not want to say it, because endings like this do not come without consequences. Sometimes they do not come at all. Olivia held his gaze, then spoke quietly. "We'll deal with that when we get there." Ryan nodded slowly, but deep down he knew something she had not admitted yet. This was not something you could just and not cleanly, not easily, not without losing something or someone. And as they prepared to step out into a world that now believed there lay one truth, remained the line between fake and real was completely gone. If you have made it this far, then do not forget to like, comment, and tell me you are watching from which country, and make sure you subscribe. Because this story might not be over yet. Because what happens next when the world is watching, when feelings are real, and when walking away is no longer possible, that is a story even they are not ready to face.